the harder I work, the luckier I get. And I think there's something huge behind that in terms of like, you can't really get lucky sitting in your bedroom thinking about what you want to do, because luck is kind of opportunities finding you and unexpected things happening. And really, you need to leave yourself as open to that as possible, which means getting out of your bedroom, getting out into the real world and seeing what's out there and being willing to accept a few knocks.
Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of Second Mind, the show that empowers you to become the greatest version of yourself. To ignite personal growth and intrigue your mind, we showcase the journeys, ideas, and mindsets of inspiring people who live and think a little bit differently. Today, we feature a guest that quit his well-paid job at Deloitte to collaborate with friends and organize the largest fundraising event in Uganda. After a roaring success organising the charity event, he has gone on to continue large-scale charity work in Uganda and has become an entrepreneur, startup investor, advisor and public speaker. Henry Blanchard, welcome to Second Mind.
Thank you, mate. I'm very happy to be here.
Cracking. So a little bit of context. I went to see your talk last night, which was titled
Quit Your Job and Follow Your Dreams, ... question mark. And the question mark is key.
Exactly, the big question mark at the end. And something that really struck me throughout the talk was you really emphasized that people who have had these seemingly overnight successes, people are viewing them in their sort of highest state of like, I've created this big thing, I've set this record, I've done this, but they don't see the work that goes into doing it. And they get this very warped perspective of how much grind it takes to get this stuff done. And you were not covering anything up about how much grind it took you. So I was wondering if you could comment on, you know, how people see overnight successes and like how you related to that. Did you see the feat of like creating the marathon in Uganda as something that might happen overnight and then you realized that it was going to take loads of grind, or did it change?
Well, so I do think this whole concept is so interesting of I call it like inspiration porn, where you see like the TED talk or the Medium article or whatever, like this kind of Forbes feature on someone, and it's just like, you know, because you need to package stuff up in a story for people to be interested in it. So like lawyer turns endurance athlete, or accountant turns charity worker or something, and like it's really neat and it's really easy to understand. And as people, we like stuff that's neat and easy to understand. Like we're drawn to that and we're attracted to it. So there's this almost this massive survivorship bias in the fact that the stories that get told by people and shared are the stories that are wrapped up into this neat little package that's easy to understand. But yeah, just like you said, like that hides this enormous amount of grind and hard work and failure as well. Like what we don't talk about enough is that people fail along the way. And we never highlight the failures of successful people because, again, sometimes that's not sexy and it's not inspiring and it's not what people want to hear. But it doesn't change the fact that those are the things that people have to go through. So for me, yeah, when we started the marathon, I mean, we had no idea what we were doing, no idea whatsoever. And we didn't even see it becoming like a massively successful thing. It was just... we were just following our curiosities, I guess. We sort of thought, this will be an exciting, interesting thing to do. So let's give it a go and see what happens. And I think sometimes you find a lot of successful things come from that when people they're not holding up this idea of like, this is what I'm aiming for and I'm going to get there regardless. They're like, this looks interesting and I'm going to follow it. And then things crop up on the way, like connections and people and opportunities, because you've taken those first steps. And I think that is what, again, this sort of inspiration porn kind of TED talk atmosphere does a lot to dissuade people. It's the fact of starting and getting moving with something that generally sets your direction. It's not you set your direction and then get moving. It's like you're like, oh, okay, we're going to do something in Uganda, and that turned into a marathon, and that turned into a massive event because of all the things that came up along the way, rather than we're going to create this amazing, massive thing and nothing's going to stop us. It was more serendipitous. It was more chancy and kind of opportunity based.
Yeah. And there are many people out there that they might be a little bit concerned about the trusting in the direction, because like you were saying, it's not this like straight path. It's something which seems to have a quite squiggly line, and you can't anticipate all those people that you'll meet and connections that you'll make that will help you along the way, and just sometimes what seems like luck. I wonder if you could explain your relationship with what seems like luck, but actually maybe was more just you having the door open to certain opportunities.
Yeah. So I'm a big believer in this idea that, like, I think you can reframe luck as serendipity, and I think you can engineer serendipity. I really like that term of, like, there's a saying that someone I can't remember who said, but it's the harder I work, the luckier I get. And I think there's something huge behind that, in terms of, like, you can't really get lucky sitting in your bedroom thinking about what you want to do, because luck is kind of opportunities finding you and unexpected things happening. And really, you need to leave yourself as open to that as possible, which means getting out of your bedroom, getting out into the real world and seeing what's out there, and being willing to accept a few knocks. For instance, the story I told you last night about how basically we started the marathon was I fell into that trap of, like, I want to create this marathon in Uganda, but I'm too scared to do it. I'm too scared to tell anyone about it. I'm embarrassed. This is, like, why me? I'm not good enough to do it. People are going to laugh at me, all this kind of chat. And then I was talking to someone at a bar, and they asked what my job was. And at the time I was working as an accountant, and there was just no way I was going to tell this, but here was a girl. I was, there was an element of chatting going on. And she said, well, what do you do? And zero chance I was going to say, I'm an accountant. Hello, would you like to go for a drink? So I put on the cloak of confidence, and I said, I'm setting up a marathon in Uganda. That's what I do for work. And at this point, I'd done nothing. It was just an idea in my head, an idea that I was quite scared of. And then from behind me, I get this tap on my shoulder, and I'm like, oh my God, she's got a boyfriend. This could be so embarrassing. And I turn around, and it's like the biggest guy I've ever seen. He's like 6'6". It turns out he was an ex-army officer, and he's like, oh, did I hear you right? Did you just say you're setting up a marathon in Uganda? I was like, yes, that's what I said. Oh God. And he said, that's interesting, because I organise a marathon in Sierra Leone. So let's go for coffee, and I'll tell you everything you need to know, and we'll just get it sorted. And that moment changed everything. So that was, you could consider that lucky. Like, I got lucky there. But also you can consider that I just had, like, the audacity to tell someone about something I was doing, even though it wasn't, like, ready for the world yet. And it was only through doing that and just being unafraid, and like, I was afraid to say it, but I said it anyway, being unafraid to say what I wanted to do and where I wanted my life to go. And just in that moment, everything changed. But that brings on to a flip side of, like, ironically, I actually don't believe in this idea of the eureka moment. Like, you hear a lot of people say, oh, you know, what was the one moment that changed everything for you or made everything different? And I fall into this trap myself. It's this idea that it's something called the founder myth, and people polish their own stories, again, because we love stories and we love simplicity and we love an easy journey. So even for me, like, I've polished that story to come across, like, cleaner than it actually is. And I think when you talk to anyone who's moved down this kind of alternative career path, or started a company, or become like a celebrity or something, there's always, like, a moment, I'm saying that in, like, air quotes, a moment where everything changed for them. But actually, when you really unpick it, I don't think that's true. I think there's just a sequence of moments, because you're on a journey and change is incremental. I really, really don't believe in this idea that there's just one thing or 1 second that changes everything. Because you know what? Like, if that guy hadn't tapped me on the shoulder, I was still going to do it. It might have taken a bit longer, but actually, that after that, I started going to events and hanging out with other race directors and people that were working in the adventure travel space. So I would have met someone at some point. But again, it was that idea that by doing all those things, it was creating opportunities for luck to find me. So if it hadn't been that guy tapping me on the shoulder, it might have been talking to someone that ran a travel company a few weeks later, and then them going for coffee with me, or me, like, hustling someone on LinkedIn and just be like, come on, like, I've got this great idea, like, I just really need 5 minutes of your time. So yeah, it's like you can say there's luck, but I think there's so much wrapped up in it of like you having to make your own luck and make things happen for you. And that's a long journey, but you won't hear that from a lot of like media outlets or people's stories, because it's not clean. And it's like, look at me, I've been rambling on for like 5 minutes about it. It's not like a clean way of looking at things. You can't just say like, oh, I was A and then I was B because this miraculous thing happened in the middle. But we like to say that because it's easy and it makes sense to our little monkey minds.
It's very like Hollywood, isn't it? Like when you're talking about like the sort of pornification of like the TED Talk stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, the eureka moment. It's so like golden. So like, people love to hear that stuff.
Yeah.
But actually, like coming back to that grind aspect, they don't talk about, and then I worked, from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. every night and made all these sacrifices and da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah, it's like, imagine like the Hollywood montage of someone like scrolling through LinkedIn and sending 100 emails and not getting any replies. Like that's not a sexy montage. That's not exciting. And also, it's I think we'll probably talk about inspiration a bit, but it's not like inspiring. And we're in kind of like an inspiration industry where people want like the catchiest phrase or the pithiest like proverb to wrap stuff up in. And actually like working really fucking hard 14 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's like there's no sort of secret to it. It's just grind. And that you can't wrap that up in anything that makes it sound really nice, because it is just grind. That's
what I really appreciate about certain people who are on their journeys and they're just real about it. And they're not trying to wrap it up in a certain way. They're not BSing people on what it takes to get there, which is weird because they've been through seemingly a lot of hard work and they want to wrap it up in something different for everybody else. But that's just the way it is. There's something that I'd like to touch on as well that you mentioned earlier about the way that you have these sort of, it doesn't go straight from one point to the other, and there's these like checkpoints along the way where you've gone down a path of interest, not necessarily passion. Some people do like know what their passion is, and that's fantastic, but there are so many people out there who don't know what their passion is, or maybe they don't even have interests. They feel like, I go home and watch Netflix or whatever, it's all right. But how would you say that you've used that sort of path of interest as like checkpoints? Like, were you thinking, I'm still enjoying this, so I'm going to keep continuing, and then it got stronger and stronger, sort of as a fader that you were turning up until it got to this flaming fireball of passion?
So I think that even like the way you frame that suggests, like, implies a lot more deliberation and kind of oversight of it. So like, to use an analogy, people say like, a lot of people misconceive evolution as like, for 4.5 billion years, life's been evolving on this planet, like, and evolving slowly towards like humans, the final finished form, where actually like evolution's blind and it keeps going and it doesn't have an end point in mind. And I think for me, certainly, and a lot of people I know who are kind of working in this space, it is, and maybe it'd be a good idea to kind of stop and do a self-audit and things like that, but it's just generally, it's like, am I enjoying what I'm doing? Good. All right, I'll keep doing it. And I don't think there's even that level of intentionality, because if you think about like your day-to-day life, for the most part, like, we do tend to do things on autopilot, whether we realize it or not. And generally, if nothing's wrong, then we just keep going along that path and letting things bash us for those wiggles. But I remember, for me, I think the key is this idea that if things are interesting to you, trust that they're interesting for a reason, and they'll probably be interesting to other people as well. So one of the big successes we had at the start of the marathon was I met someone called Danny Bent, who's a really interesting guy, and he was running something called Project Awesome, which is a free fitness workout at 6:30 a.m. In London.
Oof.
I know, right? I'm not a morning person at all, and I was just like, but you know what? Maybe this sounds like kind of fun, and I'll go once. I'll set my alarm this once, and I'll go down. And it was amazing. It was people who were just like me. They worked in London. They were getting up bleary-eyed early in the morning, and we took over like a public space by City Hall in London, played music really loudly. Everyone was like high-fiving and shouting "fuck yeah" at each other, and kind of like sort of obnoxious and slightly American style, but really, really friendly. And everyone went for coffee afterwards, and like none of these people were super, super fit athletes. They were just regular people that were like, I don't want to go to the gym and run on a treadmill. I'd rather hang out with people outside and do something fun. And for me, like, there was never any kind of like sort of overview of like, oh, I'm doing this because it will be beneficial to me. I was like, I just really enjoy this. But through meeting people there, like a couple of people we ended up hiring to work with us on the marathon, like loads of people from it ended up coming out and running the marathon and sort of being part of our team or our runners or like our customer service team, and just like became so involved with it. So ultimately that was hugely beneficial for the progress of the marathon and by proxy like my career, if you want to call it that. But there was no kind of intentionality to that. It was just, these people are really interesting, I like them, they like me, we're doing something fun together, and then loads of benefits came from that. So I think one of the things to do is just, like you said, if you do come home and end up watching Netflix, like God, we all do, it's like, just find stuff you're interested in, because the other people interested in it will be your people. Like, find your people and stuff will come from that. And so you hear like so many people, if you actually go up to someone in the street and be like, okay, like talk me through how you got your job, about half of them will say traditional application process, but half of them will be like, heard about it through a friend, heard about it through my knitting group, heard about it at my gym, like someone in the changing room was talking about it. Like, when you think about like life direction, or even better, like talk about how people met their partner, because that's like one of the biggest, that is the biggest decision most people make in their life, like who they spend the rest of their life with. And almost all the time that will come from, oh, through a friend of a friend, or I went to this thing and they were there. It's like, we can't create any chances for serendipity by watching Netflix in a room. Like, we have to make ourselves a bit uncomfortable and get out of our comfort zone and just do something where there'll be other people like us, and stuff will happen from there. And again, like, I'd love to wrap that up in a cooler, more inspirational soundbite, but I don't think there is one. It's just fucking do stuff.
Yeah.
And people will come and something will happen. And again, it's all vague and hand wavy, because that's what life is. Life is vague and hand wavy. And you can, again, to the cliched Steve Jobs quote of, you can only connect the dots in reverse. You can only look back and see how the path moved.
Yeah. I think there's this massive issue with people if they have an idea, first of all, that they think that they have to climb the mountain in one go, but actually you just need to take the first step. And that could be, as you were explaining in your talk last night, making one phone call to a friend to explain the idea, getting it down on paper. And then once you've taken that first step, you only have to take one more. And then it's only one step at a time. And I know it's a massive cliche, just one step at a time and you'll get there. But actually, it's one of those really true things that once you start going through that process, it seems to be very true. And I guess you've experienced that as well.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like once you've, I'm not going to say committed to something, because that can be like a scary term for people who haven't started something yet. Because when you say committed, that's a big scary word that implies like time and effort and wrapping your identity up in something. So instead, it's this idea of you just take like the first step. Like I said to those ladies last night, it's like, just change your tagline on LinkedIn. Like, no one cares, no one's looking at it. Just be like, instead of graphic designer, be like graphic designer and podcast host. And then boom, that's it. That's who you are now. You're now a graphic designer and podcast host. And you know what? If you don't like podcast hosting, just delete that line from your LinkedIn bio, and then you're not that anymore. It's as easy as that. But we really believe in like the permanence of our identity, whereas actually it's so much more fluid. So yeah, like you said, people, you do get scared off of committing to something because it feels so big and so scary and so daunting. But actually, like, just take a first step, and if you don't like it, then take a step back and take a step in the other direction. Like, you're not, the world isn't watching you. Like, the truth is, no one really cares that much about you, and you have this overinflated fear and regard for how other people think of you. Like, they've got their own shit, they've got their own problems. People don't care. And so it's just like, you just commit to doing a little thing, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't matter, honestly. Like, no one cares.
I've heard you before as well mention about fixed and growth mindsets, and that's something that I've come across in bits of research for myself as well. And I found that particularly interesting because it comes back to that thing of when someone has an idea, if they're in a fixed mindset, they feel like they don't have the ability to learn, grow and change. So their identity is fixed into this person that they are now. I experienced it when I came out of university. I was thinking, I'm good at these things, and okay, that's me until I'm 75, and then I'll pop and then I'll go.
Yeah.
But actually, if you've got a growth mindset, you look at the world as like new opportunities to learn, grow and change. And you were saying, like the human race, this isn't the pinnacle of how we're going to be. We're going to keep going in terms of our evolution, and that's how we are on individual levels as well, up until the day that we die. So I take it that's you've experienced that as you've gone along, sort of impressed yourself in a way. Big yourself up, impress yourself of how you've like developed your knowledge and experience.
Yeah, I mean, I have this massively critical self voice, and I'm definitely not unique in that. Like, I think most people do. But I think, like, I believe I actually have quite a fixed mindset. Like, I often catch myself being like, I can't do that, or I'm not good at that, or I don't think that'll work, or I don't think anyone will believe that. Like, that's normally my self-talk. So you really have to like seize yourself by the scruff of the neck, and it's like with all of this, it's easier said than done. But yeah, I believe my own mindset is quite and look, even me saying it's like I believe my mindset is fixed. That's like a very like but I can have a growth mindset around that. I can be like, well, I think it's fixed, but I know I can work on that, and I know I can keep checking in with myself and keep pushing myself. So like the things that I've done like in my life, I was looking back at the other day, like I've had sort of all these different types of career, like even if you sort of package it up as like, boom, I went to uni, I went to Deloitte, and now I do this. In between, there's been so many different things that I've kind of dabbled in or tried my hand at that have actually mostly gone quite well. So there's like an abundance of proof there that I can do stuff when I need to convince myself. But even with that, like it doesn't work. You sit there and be like, oh yeah, but that was in the past, and for whatever reason conditions were right then, and actually this is different, or this is harder, or I'm older now, or the world's changed, or whatever. Like we said last night, like intelligent people can always come up with intelligent reasons or intelligent sounding reasons to do nothing. So it's that self-critic and that lack of self-belief that like holds me back, holds everyone back, I think. But you've just got to sort of take a high level view on that and just be like, okay, why am I saying this? What am I actually afraid of? Where is this self-talk coming from? I think so much of it is fear. Like so much of it is fear. It's a true story. When I was setting up the marathon and I didn't say this last night because it's a very embarrassing anecdote, and I rarely tell people, and now I'm going to say it on a podcast. So
he's committed now.
Oh god. Oh no, I have committed now. So before I set the marathon, I was in a long-term relationship with someone that I really, really cared about. And in the end, we sort of went our separate ways, and it didn't really end up working out. And then very, very swiftly, she got into a new relationship with this guy who was an army officer. He was like tall and handsome and fantastic, and they're married now, and they're brilliantly happy, and it's wonderful. But I remember like, you know, very much for like when you split up with someone and you sort of, it's not like a competition to see who moves on first, but there's definitely an element of like, if the other person's happy and in a new relationship, you're like, oh shit. So I was kind of operating in this space. I tell you, this is embarrassing. This is raw. So I was kind of operating in this space where like she was quite successful in her career, and she was in this fantastic relationship with this person who was objectively like great. And my inner voice was saying like better than me. Basically better than me. I was an accountant. I didn't know where my life was going. I'm not like tall, dark and handsome, ... And then I came up with the idea for the marathon. And like, obviously when you want to start something, you need to publicize it. You need to tell the world about it. And the blocker for me, and the fear, this embarrassing fear for me, was every time I thought like, right, okay, I'm going to post a Facebook status about like, guys, this is what I'm doing. I'm setting up a marathon in Uganda. Like, who wants to help? Who's in? Set up a Facebook page, like and share it. Let's do it. Go on, please, please, please. And I just have this sort of like bizarre, and not like, I'm not going to over dramatize it and say like nausea or anything like that, but just this fear and this tickling feeling of like, whenever I imagine myself telling the world about what I was about to do, the first thought that came into my mind was those two lying in bed, blissfully post-coital, and her looking at her phone and being like, huh, look what that idiot's doing. That'll never work. What a twat. God, I'm so glad I'm not with him anymore. And that, like, that was the fear that I kept. And it's so bizarre because it's like this person like didn't matter to me anymore. Like, they'd moved on, I've moved on, but it was just that fear of being laughed at, or of being humiliated, or of it going wrong, and of people knowing about it. And that held me back for like 2 months before I did anything about it. You've just got to be open and honest with yourself about that. And again, I think just keep pulling yourself back to the fact that ultimately no one gives a shit, because they've got their own worries and their own things to think about. And yeah, maybe someone who you used to know will look at their phone and think, oh, what's that idiot doing? Oh, he's starting a podcast. Who does he think he is? But then they'll get on with their own life. And ultimately they're inconsequential. And the only people, there's this idea of the mum test, which is a concept I love and I tell my students about all the time. So if you say you're starting a business and you want to tell your mum about it, there are 2 things your mum will say. She'll say, oh my goodness, my precious angel, you're starting a business. I'm so proud of you. You can do anything. You're amazing. You're wonderful. Let me tell the aunties, like, you're brilliant. You're fantastic. And like shower you with praise and support. And the other way your mum will go, she'll say, what are you doing? Like, trying to start a business? Oh my goodness, don't you know businesses fail? You're abandoning your safe job. How could you do this? We paid all this money for your schooling and your violin lessons. Oy vey. Like, you're letting your family down. Like, and it generally goes one of 2 ways. But unless your mum is your target customer, her opinion is literally inconsequential. Likewise, and unless my ex-girlfriend was my target customer for coming out and running the marathon, her opinion was inconsequential. The only people whose opinions matter are the people that are going to use your product or service, or be your customers, or subscribe to your YouTube channel, or listen to your podcast. Those are the only people whose opinions matter. And you shouldn't care about anything else, because if you serve those people, you've got a career, you've got a business, you've got a project that works and is viable. So you should only care about what they want, what they need, and serve them and meet them where they are, and fuck everything else.
I think a massive avoidance for people, coming back to that sort of personal element of it, of generating your own idea and sort of putting that out into the world. If people are commenting on it, it's not like they're commenting on something you did at work where it's like, oh yeah, this is the role, you can kind of mask yourself behind that. This is your idea and it's come from you. So, and how have you managed to sort of remain sort of feeling strong in your idea and trusting in it? Even, I'm sure you've had like some bits of criticism. Have you just really looked to the correct audience when you've been taking feedback? Because I do believe feedback is something that's really important, as long as it's coming from the right people and done in the right way. Yeah. So yeah.
I mean, I'd love to say yeah. You know, I just focus and double down on the target market, the people I'm trying to serve. But fuck, man, like it hurts a lot whenever anyone says anything bad about anything that you do, because you internalize it so much. Like for me, I've internalized the marathon so much. So there's actually now a few copycat events that are springing up around the world.
It's a great thing.
I know, right? And that is it. That is amazing that you said that, because it is a great thing. Like it is amazing, like people doing stuff and wanting to help people, but you have this like the crocodile brain inside being like, oh my god, like someone might look at what we're doing and then what someone else is doing, and heaven forbid, what if they think theirs looks better? Or what if like someone goes and runs in like Czechoslovakia instead of Uganda or something? It's like there's 100,000 marathons in the world. It's fine. There's room enough for everyone. But yeah, so you do take it quite personally, and you shouldn't. But at the same time, it's really hard not to, because like anything you do where you're passionate about it is an extension of yourself. And I'm sure there are many wiser heads than me that could tell you exactly how to avoid becoming wrapped up in it. But for me, it's difficult. So, like, for instance, the talks I do, there's a feedback system on the website where people book through, and like pretty much universally the reviews are positive. But occasionally, like someone will come along and be like, oh, what, you know, it wasn't for me, or I didn't like it, or like the best one I got one a couple of months ago, where someone was saying, "Oh, well, the advice just basically boiled down to just do it," and I knew that anyway, so it's rubbish.
2 hours wasted.
Yeah. And oh god, and one other one was like, what? Because sometimes I get guest speakers in. And she was like, one of the guest speakers had some notes, and he read off his notes. What a waste of money! I could have just like downloaded his notes for free or something. And like, and you really want to engage with that and just be like, no, but you didn't. And, but like, everyone's got their own shit, and everyone's coming with their own expectations, and I think you have to realize that behind like every comment is someone living their own life with their own struggles and their own problems, or their own, just potentially like you've miscommunicated who you are and what you're doing, and you've given someone a false expectation, and then I mean that's on you. So yeah, negative comments, they're always going to hurt, and I think, but you have to pay attention. There's this idea that if there's one kind of boils down to customer service, if there's one squeaky wheel, there's 20 silent ones that are also wobbling. Like this idea that if one person's complaining to you about something, because most people, especially here in Britain, we're quite chilled out. We don't like make a fuss. We don't complain. So if one person's complaining to you about an issue, it's going to be an issue for lots of other people. But for whatever reason, it's just not something they wanted to talk about or worry about. Most interestingly, it's when you're doing anything kind of customer facing. So for instance, imagine you're doing a YouTube channel, or even better, imagine you're doing a podcast, and someone writes in and says, like, emails you like, well, you know, I'm really frustrated because like the formatting of the text on your podcast description always comes through really funny on my phone. And you're like, oh my God, I had no idea that happens. But for like that one person that's emailed you, there's probably like 1,000 people that have been frustrated by it and just been like, I'm just not going to bother downloading this or listening to it anymore. And they just silently drift away. So you do have to pay attention to the criticism, because, you know, that's how you learn and that's how you grow. Like you can't, if everything's hunky-dory the whole time, like you're not making any progress because you're just resting on your laurels and thinking, oh, everything's fine. It's all ticking along nicely.
Yeah. So take me back to when you were working at Deloitte. You had the sort of classic sort of spit out of university. You got your degree, and then got onto the grad scheme at Deloitte, which it seems like quite a, you know, when people get to that point, they're like, yeah, I'm a successful graduate. I've got on this Deloitte grad scheme, and you know, I'm making a fair bit of money. Moved to London, like the sort of classic graduate life. Yeah. How did you then realize that maybe it wasn't for you? Like, what were your feelings at that time?
So I think grad schemes are really, they're an interesting idea. So for one, like most of the big corporate grad schemes will take you if you've got a 2-1, like regardless of subject. So I went and did accounting with Deloitte, and there were people there who'd done accounting and finance degrees who were coming in at exactly the same level with exactly the same expectations as me, who was coming in with a philosophy degree. And it just seems so bizarre that basically all you had to do was just get 2-1, regardless of whatever it was in. So for me, like philosophy involved a lot of reading, but it was only 2 hours of lectures a week, whereas someone else doing like maths or physics or chemistry or biology, you know, they'd be in the lab sort of 30, 40 hours a week and come out with something that was regarded the same and equally seen by employers. And I thought that was somewhat counterintuitive. The other thing that I find really interesting about it is that for these, it's called the milk round, like the companies going around all the universities and trying to pull in all the good grads, and the hoops they make you jump through. So there's this big emphasis on you as a rounded person. So they want to see a 2-1, but they also want to see like you've been a social sec of society, or you're on the sports team, or you've done charity work, or you were the yearbook captain at your high school or something. Like they want to see that you've done all these creative, interesting, dynamic things, and that you'll add distinctiveness to the firm, and you'll bring in all these external parts of yourself that aren't just academic. And then when you get there, they're like, brilliant, this sort of 1,000, like allegedly the cream of the crop, like 1,000 best individuals we could find across all these universities that have done all these amazing things, and now we're going to completely homogenize you and put you all through this 3-year scheme that is exactly the same and identical for everyone, and you're all doing the same work day by day, and it's very like routine based, and it sort of like just squashes the color out of people and chips off all the edges and the little spiky bits that kind of stick out and make them interesting and unique. And then you find 3 years later, all everyone does is work really hard, have a pint after work, go home and watch Netflix, rinse and repeat. And like everything that was unique and special and interesting about them has just been buried underneath this sort of grey cloak of corporate sameness.
A beautiful image, isn't it?
Yeah. So for me, you know, I started a couple of businesses at university. One went all right, and then one like literally just crashed and burned because I didn't know what I was doing. And that kind of scared me off a bit. So I ended up taking this grad scheme because I had no idea what to do, but I was scared of doing anything by myself because I'd done this one thing that hadn't gone very well. And for me, then that was like, well, I'm a failure now. Like, I failed at something, and I'm now marked with this like indelible ink of failure written across my forehead, and I can't ever do anything again because I tried this one thing and it didn't work. So I guess I better just get this grad job and kind of get my head down for the next 50 years and then retire and die. So it'd be like commuting in on the Northern Line in London, you know, like nose pressed into someone else's armpit, working there really hard, and then kind of you just sort of look every day, and every day would be the same, and every commute would be the same, and it was just, it was grey and lifeless. So for me, it was just, but again, I had no idea that there could be something else. I was like, well, okay, well, I've tried sort of setting up my own thing, and like it went well, and then it didn't. So obviously that's not for me. And you know, people aren't allowed to just set up businesses or go off and like live an alternative lifestyle. Like it was this idea of waiting for permission and not choosing myself. I really felt like someone had to give me the okay to do it, and because no one was going to give me the okay to do it, because you know, I thought there was a certain type of person that was allowed to do stuff like that. You know, my family's really working class. I was the first person to go to university, and I was just like, you know, this isn't for people like me. So I was like, well, okay, well, I'm just going to do this job until I die, I guess, because that's what you do. Like, you're not supposed to like your job. You're not supposed to like work. It's supposed to be crap, and that's life. And that's what I thought.
Coming from a very like fixed mindset, like we were talking earlier. Like, hey, this is my position in society. Thanks very much. It seems all right, but a little bit shit, but a little bit all right.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I'll take it. And then you got to a point, obviously not like hitting rock bottom or anything like that, but you felt this greyness. And I know it's hard to put into words when you do have that repetitive nature. And actually, when you start knowing, if you start seeing the patterns in your life and you're not happy with them, that's a really big message of like, I've noticed this. Yeah. Why have I noticed this? Is it a message? And I do believe that life gives you small sort of knocks, and like thoughts aren't always random. Sometimes the thought is taking you in a direction. So then I take it you got to this boiling point when you're thinking, okay, sod this, time for the next step. I'm going to trust in this direction.
Well, you know, like yes and no. Like again, we could package this up into a eureka moment. But I just don't think they exist. So there was one time when so I was working in Canary Wharf doing some accounting, and I was up on the 30th floor when I was leaving, and I had like just a long shit day. We were working in a windowless room, working on the Canary Wharf accounts, which were just very boring, and a lot of rich people making a lot of money and wanting to make even more. And I got in the lift on the 30th floor, and I pressed down, and the lift slipped a floor. And because I'm a very restrained English person, like I've never pressed like the emergency alarm on anything in my life, and I was like jabbing the alarm. I was like, holy fuck, I'm gonna die, it's falling, the lift shaft's falling down. And I got through to the control room, and they're like, yeah, don't worry, it slips all the time, it's fine. And I just remember being so shaken, and I got down to the bottom, and I was just like, holy fuck, this would have been the worst way to die, like in Canary Wharf after a long day of accounting in a windowless room. And you know what, I'd love to say that was the eureka moment, and at that point that was my boiling point, and I knew I had to leave. But ultimately, actually, I've been on that journey for like the last 2.5 years that I'd been there. So I was working for them, and because there's not a lot of ways out in terms of like, people don't come up to you and be like, oh, have you thought about doing this like alternative thing or this, because there's not like a clearly defined career path outside of the the clearly defined career path, is there? It's like you join a corporate and you get promoted and you get a mortgage and you have some kids and then you die, and that's sort of the career path because it's easy to understand and lots of people do it. And anything else is so disparate and non-homogenized that no one can present you a clear plan. So I'd been starting to work in Uganda with one of my Ugandan friends, doing fundraising events with him and stuff, just at the evenings and the weekends, because basically I was like, well, I can't quit my job because people don't do that, but I would like to find some sort of small crumb of meaning outside of the spreadsheet. So in my spare time, because again, that was a career model that I'd seen people do, like people in the firm, people in London would do like their CSR or their volunteering days or stuff like that. And I was like, well, okay, well, I can do that. Obviously, like in the little bits of spare time I have here and there, I can help my friends in Uganda. So I'll do that. And then just slowly that grew up to the point where once we'd committed to the idea of organising the marathon, it just became apparent. And this was like 2 or 3 months after like the lift incident, which wasn't really an incident at all. It was just like another small step on that journey and in that process. So about 3 months after that, it just became apparent. I was like, oh, actually organising a marathon in a foreign country is kind of a lot of work and I can't really juggle the two. So which one's going to have to go? Sod it, I'll quit the Deloitte job because actually, like I'm a qualified accountant. I can probably get another job. Like it might not be quite as good or as well paid, or actually maybe I can back myself. Maybe it would be as good as well paid because I've gone off and done something quite interesting, and maybe that would make me like a more desirable candidate or employee. So it was just that kind of state of rationality of, what, we have this idea of like, oh, but what if I lose everything? But I was like 26, living in London, not married, no kids, no mortgage, like living with my mates. It was like, what is everything to lose? Like there's not actually that much. And what I found really interesting was once I quit my job and moved to Uganda, I spent sort of 18 months traveling around before I came back to the UK. And I just stepped straight back into my kind of old social life. Like it was like all my friends were still there. They were still doing the same sort of things. It was still like, it was really easy to kind of step back in. So there's this FOMO idea of like, life will move on without me. And actually, no, like you move on and life is still there waiting for you to just pick it back up if you want to.
If someone's feeling that like grey atmosphere in their life, repetitive nature, they're looking at the spreadsheets and they're thinking, nah. Is there maybe like the top 3 bits of advice you would give to them to making their first steps outside of that world?
Okay, so your first steps have to be small because otherwise you get daunted by it and you get fearful of it and you think you're overcommitting. So literally, like for me, what I would always suggest to people is literally just like find your people. Whatever it is you're interested in, go onto Eventbrite, go onto meetup.com, just search for it and commit to buying a ticket and going along. And it'll be awkward and you'll turn up and you won't know anyone and you'll think, oh my God, what am I doing here? Everyone knows everyone else. I'm a failure. I'm not like friendly enough or sociable enough. Oh my God, I'm just going to go home and watch Netflix. And that will happen. And then what you have to do is you have to go and do it again. Because it's like you just have to keep showing up. Like whatever it is in work or life or social or dating or whatever, you just have to keep showing up. Like you can't get scared off because like where people fall down a lot is the size of the action we take is too small. It's like we send off one CV to a company and we don't hear anything back. And then we're like, well, it's done. It's rubbish. I tried, but nothing happened. So I'm done. Was actually like we really underestimate the amount of time stuff takes, the amount of investment emotionally stuff takes, like to make it really successful. So you just have to start and be aware that like you will have to deal with a little bit of discomfort, but try and minimize that as much as possible. So yeah, just try and trick yourself into like, okay, I'm going to buy this one ticket to this one event and I'm going to talk to one person. And that doesn't even I'm just going to say hello to one person I don't know, like gaping through clenched hands over my face, like, oh God, what if they don't say hello back? And it'll be like, just do one thing that puts you slightly out of your comfort zone and near people who are interested in the same stuff that you're interested in. Yeah. And if you're not interested in anything, I mean, I don't believe that. But like, even if it's something like Netflix, like if Netflix is your passion, then like go to like a cinema event or like a screening party or something. Like there's so many ways to tap into the things you're interested in. There's so many communities out there. Like the internet is amazing in that it's like connected the whole world around these weird hobbies and things that like before you'd be the town weirdo if you're into like left-handed stamp collecting or something. There's one person who's into that in each city around the world, but there's like 10,000 cities around the world, so there's 10,000 of you, and you can form a community based around that, and now you can monetize that and make that your career. So yeah.
So start small.
There we go rambling away. So start small, but do start, and do it in a way where you can find your people, or at least put yourself in the way of kind of where you think people are likely to be. I think like it's really easy to fall into the research and reading trap. Like so easy of like, oh, I want to do something, so I'm gonna like read around it loads and watch loads of videos and stuff like that. And like that is like, inspiration is important because inspiration like gets us to do stuff, but inspiration isn't durable. Like I'm really fond of saying that, like inspiration doesn't last. So you either have to keep topping it up, but that you just then on a cycle of like, I just have to watch YouTube videos every day. So it's like you have to at some point replace inspiration with action, because the world doesn't care whether you're inspired or not. Like if you're just sitting, like there's no difference looking at an inspired person sitting in their bedroom and a bored person sitting in their bedroom. Like if you're outside of that bedroom, you can't tell what's going on inside. Like there's no difference. You have to actually do something with that. So in fact, there's no way to boil it down into like a nice 3-step plan. It's just basically you just have to do something.
Yeah.
You have to, because the world isn't going to do it for you.
I've heard before people mention the 80-20 ratio of 80% action, 20% research, even at the start. And it's so easy to put those barriers in place and say, just one more Wikipedia article, and next thing you know, you're like looking at like weird brands of goldfish on the internet or something. Your mind has a funny way of being able to lead you away from action, and sometimes you need to be really harsh on yourself and just say like, I know it's going to be uncomfortable, and be okay with that. Step outside of my comfort zone and do something small. Like you're saying, the first point, do something just really small and know that it will be a little bit uncomfortable. But I think that's a really good thing to be able to share. Thank you. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received from anybody?
From a guy called Derek Sivers. He said, if, kind of riffing off what we said before, if information alone was the answer, we'd all be billionaires with perfect abs. Right? This idea that you can know everything, but unless you do something with it, there's no point. You're just a walking encyclopedia, but you're not actually doing anything with it. So it's like we all know, and we even said this last night, we all know what we should do. Like if we want to run a sub 3-hour marathon, or if we want to have an amazing body, or if we want to get fit, or if we want to learn the violin, like we all know the steps we have to take. Like if we really stopped and thought about it, like, okay, I have to buy violin, book violin lessons, practice every day, but we don't do it. And it's just that gap between intention and action that you need to bridge, and you only get good at that by practicing it. Like no one's good at anything at the start, including simply taking action. Like it's a learned skill. And because of, without ranting about the education system at all, but it's like we are on a conveyor belt from the age of 3 most of our lives, of like there's a clearly defined next step and we don't have to think about it too much. And like if you look at school's the best. Like even if you do nothing at school, you still move up from year 3 to year 4 to year 5. Like that's just an automatic process. So we become very good at sitting back and like letting things happen to us, and we become very good at being on the defensive rather than the offensive, in terms of like we sit there and wait for things to happen to us. Loads of people run their businesses kind of with their inbox as their to-do list, but your inbox is a to-do list that anyone in the world can add something to. It's this idea that we sit back and wait for stuff to happen, whereas actually 90% of the time you should be on the offense. You should be making stuff happen. You should be reaching out and doing stuff off your own back from your own ideas. But again, that's a skill you have to learn, because there's a lot of unlearning of, I've just been drifting along and kind of been carried by the wave sort of all the way through, like me, like all the way through school, through uni, through a grad scheme. And it takes a lot to kind of push out of that and go, okay, like this is the way I'm being pushed. but actually I don't want to go that way. And it's hard to even see that it's happening to you, and it's even harder still to break it, which is why you have to build up to it slowly.
I think that's really powerful.
Yeah.
Before I ask my last question, it's the time for self-promotion, shameless self-promotion. Where can people find you on social media? Is there anything that you'd like to say about people finding your content in the future?
So I have my own website, which I've always thought was a really narcissistic thing to have. So I actually just replaced it with a holding page about a year ago. So it's henryblanchard.com. And I'm on Twitter, but the best way to find me is through the Uganda Marathon. So it's henry@ugandamarathon.com. Ugandamarathon.com is what we do. And like I'm always willing to help people. I run a startup education course for young people. I do a lot of mentoring. Just like contact me if anyone wants any help. Like I don't charge for it because I just think that like the most exciting thing in the world is seeing people like take life into their own hands and do something with it. I just think that's so cool, and I just love helping people like kind of go on that first step of like, oh shit, like I did a market stall and I sold my own little homemade protein balls and people actually bought them and I made money. Oh my God, this is amazing. I want to do more of this. Like that little first step where people just begin to realize it's possible. Or like I set up a Twitter account for my I don't know, my like football memes and jokes page or something, and someone retweeted it. Like, oh my God, I did something that someone else in the world, a complete stranger, like engaged with or liked or responded to. And it's that kind of initial moment, and that's where people get the momentum from. And I love seeing that happen. So I'm happy to help anyone if they want to get on that path.
Wicked. Thank you very much. Finally, if I asked your friends, what would they say your one superpower is?
Oh God. It would depend on which friends when they knew me from.
Maybe someone who worked with you on the marathon.
Okay. So interestingly, a guy called Andy Miller, who I run the marathon with, he I think he'd actually say my superpower is inconsistency, which is probably makes me more of a villain than a hero. But yeah, it's like when I'm on, I'm very, very, very good, and I'm like not afraid of the grind and not afraid of working hard. And when I'm not on, I'm just not on, which is probably more honest than I intended to be 10 seconds ago. But yeah, like we're all flawed individuals, and I think like we talked about and we touched on mental health last night. I think it's so important to, as part of this demystifying process, like everyone has tough days. Like even Richard Branson will wake up some days and just be like, fuck this, like I don't want to deal with this, and this has gone wrong, and oh my God, this is a ball ache. Like it's this idea that you always have to eat a shit sandwich. Like wherever you are in life, there will be some stuff you don't want to deal with, and there'll be some stuff that depresses you, and there'll be some stuff that you find really upsetting or challenging. And it's just, I think it's just understanding that everyone is, I'm not going to say flawed because that's a value judgment, and that's also like some of my own insecurities coming through, but it's everyone is on their own journey, and it is hard. And you have to be as honest and as open with that as you can, because like what's the point otherwise? What's the point in having this front that you continually put up to the world? Like it makes for good Instagram stories, but it's not real. So yeah, so I guess that's not really a superpower at all, is it?
It's an honest superpower. I like the truth behind it. Henry, thank you so much for joining me on Second
pleasure,
Mind. Everyone, please do follow Henry Blanchard, because he is giving away really, really good content, I'm sure, like through your talks, and look out for him if he's coming to your city. Follow him on social media, add him on LinkedIn. He's giving away this free advice, and please, link up with him. Take the first step. So yeah, everyone, you've been listening to Second Mind, the show that fuels you to be the greatest version of yourself. If you've enjoyed our discussion today, please do smash the like button and subscribe to us so you can keep updated with all the latest episodes. Your support is what helps drive our messages out to more people. Thank you all for listening. And until next time, stay true.